In Myrtle Beach, you always go at your own pace. Lie out on the sand, lie out by the pool, go boogie boarding, go surfing, walk the boardwalk, walk the marsh walk, golf at one of 90 golf courses, mini golf at one of 50 mini golf courses, fish off a pier, fish from a chartered boat, go shopping, get drinks, eat the freshest seafood. The list is exhaustive, but the experience isn't. You can go all out or do nothing at all. How you relax is up to you. There is so much to do and explore, whether you're traveling with friends, family, or just yourself. With 60 miles of beach, you're going to find your place. If this sounds like what you need, then this is where you belong.
Hey, do y'all like fishing for prizes? Maybe a trip to Costa Rica or a once-in-a-lifetime African safari? Well, the Grand Strand Fishing Rodeo is back. Thanks to the hard work of Visit Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and Trilogy Outdoors Media, this once-popular event is back and is bigger and better than ever. This event is comprised of 12 monthly competitions that culminate in November with our annual banquet and expo, the celebration of fishing on the Grand Strand. New to this event is the freshwater division that will help include all of our anglers that live and visit the Grand Strand throughout the year. Monthly species winners will receive great prize packages from Bass Pro Shop and Surf Signs and Designs. But most importantly, they will receive an invite for them and a guest to our annual banquet and an entry in the grand prize drawing. So whether you fish the rivers, a pond, the pier, the surf, or a boat, you have a chance to win the grand prizes. To get signed up or for additional information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com and click on event. Also, you can visit any of our weigh stations and registration stations to get signed up as well. Best of luck to everyone, and we'll see you at the scale.
Trilogy Outdoors.
All right, folks, it's time for Trilogy Outdoors podcast. It is a wonderful pleasure to be back in the studio with the Senator here joining me today, and we've got another guest in the studio, and this is, I actually spoke with this certain guest that's in the studio with us almost 7 months ago about having you and Miles on the show.
That's right.
And that is Michael Stone, Captain Michael Stone, former owner of Marlin Quay Marina, and a friend of mine for a long time, avid fisherman, and one-time holder, right? Or do you still hold it?
No, it was finally broken. I held it for like 12 years.
Bluefin tuna record in South Carolina.
That is correct. It was the first.
What was it?
338.6.
All right, so I with Jim McWhorter on the first Underdog out of Merle's out of Garden City, we went up to Frying Pan fishing for yellowfin one day when the yellowfin were thick up there.
Right.
Caught a bluefin tuna first part of the year. You know, like right when the tuna were supposed to show up, the bluefin I guess were leaving, and caught a bluefin, and he ended up being 315 or something like that. This was 97 maybe, 98.
Right.
And brought him home, was so excited. And by the way, I'd never want to go reel another one in. But brought him home, was so excited, staked him up, cut him up, put him on the grill, decided that I couldn't eat any of it.
Really?
On the grill, I just thought it was terrible. It was oily and terrible. They're great sushi fish, but
I couldn't get the cats to eat ours when we got through. We tried it every way we could.
Couldn't do it.
No, we tried, and sushi, we tried it on the grill. We tried frying it. We tried everything. It was so oily till we just.
It's very oily and just not that good. I mean, I understand the Japanese know how to make it with sushi, but I could not figure it out. When you go from eating yellowfin every night like we were doing back then to eating a bluefin, there's no difference. I mean, there's no comparison. There's
So I was saying that yellowfin is obviously way better than bluefin.
Oh, my God.
Much better.
Tons better. Tons better.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got another guest who is joining us via phone, and that is Michael introduced me to him through a Facebook post where he had actually read Captain Johnny Savage's book, and I'm calling him back. I'm going to give him that to start off with. I know we talked about this, but where he had read Captain Johnny Savage's book, and the story is just incredible. And I reached out to Johnny immediately, and believe it or not, he reached back to me. So we have Captain Author. How about that? Is that better? Captain Author Johnny Savage of Lost in the Stream joining us from Virginia Beach.
Yes, sir.
All right, I got you live. I'm sorry, I should have told you that. Hey, you're on now.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Michael, thank you so much for sharing that. And, I tell you what, it's, these days Things are so different related to marketing with books. So my book, I own the rights to it because I didn't want a publisher to be able to take the miracle out of it. And so I do have a publisher behind me, but it's, maybe not one of the larger names that's tied in as much with, I guess, the mainstream stuff. But I tell you what, it's the shares and the things like that on Facebook and Instagram have been a big help, and as well as with this podcast. So, definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all at Trilogy Outdoors.
Well,
Love y'all's name.
Go ahead.
So Johnny, this is Steven, by the way. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
I don't think we've said the title. What's the name of the
Lost
book?
in the Stream.
Lost in the Stream is the name of the book.
Yep.
All right, and obviously that comes from you being lost in the stream, right?
Yes, sir. Went for a long swim one day.
Yeah. So give us, and I share a similar experience, but I want to talk about your experience today, not about mine. So I know we're going to get heavy into it, but give us sort of an overview for the audience so they can get their mind right. Tell us a little bit about what happened.
So in 1998, I was myself and Captain Merrick Bingham were making the crossing from Key West to Cancun for the fishing season.
Yep.
And it was April 13th when we pulled out of Stock Island there at Key West. And just before 9 o'clock in the morning, we were hit by a rogue wave. And within a couple minutes, the boat was gone. We were in the water without time or the ability for a mayday, life jackets, EPIRB, or life raft. And nobody knew where we were 9 miles out in the middle of the Gulf Stream.
90?
Yes, sir.
90.
90 miles out.
All right, so not 90 miles from Key West headed towards Cancun would put you, I'm trying to imagine the map right now, but that would put you somewhere off the southern tip of Cuba?
More closer to kind of like central Cuba.
Central Cuba, okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm. But Cuba would have definitely been the closest landmass to us.
All right, and how close were you from
in the
Cuba?
stream?
How close were you from Cuba?
I guess probably like 20 miles, something like that.
Right. Okay. So not unable to see land anywhere. No islands.
No, sir.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And
in the Gulf Stream. So
yeah. And so you're moving.
Yes, sir.
And not a lot of boat traffic on that side of Cuba, obviously. I wouldn't think.
No, sir.
No.
Especially not down that lower area. I mean, I think there's probably more traffic today.
Yeah.
But that's part of the miracle is where we ended up.
Okay, and so you were headed down there to fish for the season. What is the season in Cancun? You said Cancun, right?
Yeah, so it's a little bit sooner now than it used to be, but back then it was mainly March, April, May.
Okay.
So our plan was Cancun or the Port Aventuras area, then on down to Belize, and then Guatemala. And actually, I was going to have to fly out of Guatemala like around the beginning of June to get back to up here to go to Hatteras for a brand new Viking boat that was being delivered.
All right, what boat were you in?
It was a 56-foot Jim Smith called the Aninga.
All right.
I mean, beautiful boat. And so that morning when we left, it was a 2 to 3 foot, pretty decent sized groundswell, but not high, but just nice and spread out, perfect sea. And Jim Smiths are amazing following sea boats.
Yeah, I know the boat. I know exactly the boat. And that's really one of the things I wanted to talk about for a second, because
cool.
You were in a 56-foot boat, which is, for those people that don't know on the radio show, that's a good sized boat.
Yeah.
It's a very stable platform. It's designed for seas much bigger than 2 to 3 feet. And here comes a rogue wave, which a lot of people don't know actually exist, but they do. I mean, they really do. And did you see the wave coming?
No, sir. And that was the thing that has been. So there's, I understand definitely with, your role with the reserves and the Army, and there's like it took me a long time to come to terms with, like, there was like definitely like a post-traumatic stress type of situation related to this wave, because it wasn't but it wasn't a situation where, sometimes if you have a big swell like a hurricane ground swell that you're running in, you lose RPMs and you can sense the boat laboring as it goes,
right,
up a sea, and then of course your revolutions and everything turn up as you're going down sea. So it wasn't like we were course, we were coming from a stop, and Eric was pushing the throttles back up to get her back up on plane, but it wasn't anything different as far as the laboring of the vessel. But it was still more like it's like a hole. That's the thing that's so hard to describe is, fortunately we weren't up to speed, but it's like that's the only way I can describe it. It's like a hole. I mean, I don't know how far it went out to the side because when it went over, I was falling forward. So I don't know. I don't know the exact depth of it because I just know that from from the vantage point on the bridge where the helm is, because I was standing next to Eric at the helm. That's everything. As I started falling forward, it was just my peripheral looking forward from that point.
Yeah, but I mean, this was it swamped the boat. Is that right?
It when the boat hit the bottom of it, when she stuffed into the bottom of the trough, it was just the most god awful.
Yeah.
Just
I read
with the bulkheads breaking. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I know when I read it, I had to read that part of the book 3 or 4 times just to try to visualize what had happened because, after you had repaired the door, come back up, and y'all are starting to take off, it happened so rapidly. But my first vision when I first read it was more of a perfect storm wave where you climbed it and fell off the backside. And then the more I read it and the more way you worded it, I started to understand that that's not the case. It was more in my views of reading and the way I took the wording as falling off of a wave. And I envisioned something almost to the effect of an underwater cavern opened up and sucked all the water down like an earthquake or something of that nature.
Exactly.
And it just fell, just basically run off a cliff.
Mm-hmm. And that's what makes, of course, I'm not an oceanographer, but that's what kind of makes the most sense to me. And the thing about it is as we were, 90 miles, that puts you close to that, that drop, that edge that's out there, and it's deep water, close to, she's deep there. And,
yeah.
So I got hit by one
off of 1,000 fathoms.
I got hit by one off of Bull Island, I don't know, 15 years ago. And it was a very similar experience. I was in an 18-foot Hughes, so I wasn't in a 56-foot boat or a 57-foot boat, but I was in an 18-foot Hughes, and it happened very similar to that. Flat ocean, I saw white water on the horizon, on a flat ocean, which isn't ever.
I've heard these stories before.
Which isn't a good sign. And then before I knew it, the boat, the bow of the boat, which only 18-foot boat, the bow of the boat was about vertical with me. And then it fell, and I was in 20 feet of water, and my bow hit sand. And then the boat tumbled like that.
Wow.
And so same thing. It's like a hole opens underneath that wave. And I was right. I was a mile off the beach, so everything worked out for me. But being in 10,000 feet of water, 90 miles off the beach, totally different experience. So the boat stuffs, right? It doesn't.
And her bow deck separated.
All right, everything separated. Stringers broke. Everything separated to pieces. Did anything float?
Yes. So that's one of the things, the points I like to make. So we were going to be out of the country for a while, and over there, we do Mediterranean style dockage. So we had polyballs, coolers, freezer, all this stuff on the deck in the cockpit. And one of the things, so it was only blowing maybe 10, 12 knots, something like that. Not bad. It's pretty calm.
Yeah.
And but one of the things that we don't think about is the speed and our capabilities in the water. So, of course, that stuff was floating up high, and it was just taken away so quick. That's one of the things that still blows my mind is that, and the message I do want to get across is, being prepared just isn't about having it there. It's because we wouldn't be able to get to that stuff. We were blessed that, there was a small igloo bait cooler that we were able to get our hands on. Before it blew away from us when we had cleared her.
A bait cooler.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
that's one of the small bait coolers.
One of the small bait coolers. Yeah. So that was the best you could do. That was the best you could do out of everything on that boat. A bait cooler.
It was gone so quick.
Really?
In that light wind, because it's sitting up on top of the water.
Yeah.
Or down in the water.
Yeah. So you could see it. It was just in the distance and no chance of getting to it.
The other stuff, yeah, we just watched it go away, and we didn't. I guess Eric did end up hearing about like some of our gear turning up sometime later.
Yeah.
But we, of course, if if things wouldn't have turned out the way it was, we definitely wouldn't have still been with it.
So the bait cooler was obviously locked closed. It had some air to it. It was airtight, so it floated well.
It floated very well, and it was empty at the time.
Okay.
And that's where probably I'm going to say one of the initial miracles came to be, is that when we each grabbed a hand on the bait cooler, and we grabbed each other, and it's not like we said, all right, let's do this now. We'd never even talked about our faith before. But it was in perfect unison that we grabbed the bait cooler and grabbed each other, and immediately, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we just continued to say the Lord's Prayer over and over and over again. And I think part of that is knowing that, we knew from the get-go that the Lord was going to be our only salvation out there.
Yeah, there's a saying in the military, there's no atheists on the battlefield, and I've got a saying, there's no atheists when you float in the ocean.
Yeah.
And
That's in there.
Yeah, I mean,
actually, it's more word like this. There's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole.
Yeah, right. I mean, but it's so true. I mean, and Adam, I want to stick with the story for a minute before we get to the to the rest of it. But it is so true that so many people go about living their lives day to day as though they control their own destinies, and the minute that destiny is yanked out of their hands, and they realize it's not in my hands anymore, all of a sudden they reach out to God as though he hasn't been there all along. And to me, that's such an incredible thing as a human being to I think that everybody, and it's scary to say, but everybody needs an opportunity to understand their destiny's not in their own hands. Everybody needs that opportunity at least once to realize I'm not in control of my own life. Because when you do that, everything changes. Your perspective on all of life changes, and so that's amazing. All right, so let's carry on with the story, and then we can get to whatever you want to get to after that. But
I agree.
Please carry on with the story.
Okay. So I'll just go through that moment of when she went down. So we were running along. So we had a single sideband call planned with another boat for 9 a.m.
Okay.
That was already in Mexico.
Okay.
And how it works is, sometimes those things happen, sometimes those things don't happen. Those single sideband radios, even though they could reach a long way, they weren't exactly always super reliable, especially when you had a weather fax coming through on them.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we were running along, and all of a sudden we heard like this noise going bam, bam, sound like wood smacking together. I'm like, what in the world is that? So Eric kind of pulled back on the throttles a little bit to more like a high idle, and I went downstairs. And so the Aninga had where you would enter from the cockpit, or the area like where most people might know where the fighting chair is, to go into the salon. There was a pair of double doors, almost like the barn doors that are more common now, as far as a track above, and they're on rollers. But there's two doors. So on a boat, if you just had those two doors and you didn't have a means to control them, they'd be slamming at each other. Right. As the boat rocked. So there was actually a system with a cable and pulleys attached to the door. So regardless of how much the distance you open those two doors on that track above, basically they would counterbalance each other as a boat rocked, so they wouldn't move. That one of those pulleys, tighteners had come loose, so I fixed that, and that's when I was in the process of climbing up on the bridge and told Eric, hey, look, I'll get some Loctite on there when we get to Mexico tonight. And so he was in the process pushing up the throttles, and we were kind of chatting and looking ahead, and then that's when we saw it. And so when she went off of it, I was standing. So to describe the bridge of the Aninga, of course, you had the helm chair right behind the console where the helm was and the helm pod, and then your electronics kind of like went off all the way to your outboard the port side or left side, and I was standing to the starboard side or the right side, and there's like a little aisle that goes through there to open up to where like a bench sheets were in the front. And as she was going down the wave, I started to free fall forward, and so that boat did not have a full enclosure of curtains. Some of those, again, this boat was built in the mid 80s, so back then, it was all they didn't have the high horsepower they have now. So it was about doing everything you can do to get the most speed with the least resistance. So this boat had the curtain right there in front of the console, similar to maybe like what an outboard would have. And so when I fell forward down that little aisleway, I was able to grab hold of one of the tuna tower legs and a little rail that went across the front of the boat as she went down, and as I was kind of like ducking to hide behind the front of the brow, and that's when she hit, and I just heard that god awful, which is where their bulkheads breaking. And as I was going down, I remember looking in front of me and seeing from where the house meets the bow deck, like a foot or so in front on that starboard side, the crack going across, running across to the left, the port side. And even though I saw that, I still expected to feel her to ride out and just kind of ride back out of the swell. And of course she didn't. She stuck.
Yeah.
And that's when I turned around to Eric and was like, oh my God, she's going down. And that says a lot, because I'll tell you how I was raised. If I could say a lot of stuff, but if I use the Lord's name in vain, I better duck, because my dad, that's not the only thing he would give me a smack for. And I think in that moment it was more about reverence and understanding that what was going on with it. And so when I said that to Eric, he immediately turned to his left and down, which is where our radios were, because our first line is the Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
Mm-hmm.
And he stopped mid-reach. And I think that says a lot about the force that vessel took. I've been out there and assisted with rescues before, and actually seen boats, big boats, big, well-built Carolina boats, that are, the house is underwater, the bridge is going underwater, but yet the radar on top of the hardtop is still spinning.
Sure.
So those radios being dead immediately shows, I think, what kind of an implosion happened within that vessel. And it's nothing against Jim Smith. They're very well built boats. They're great, and they were so far ahead of their time as far as design and materials. It's just the force of the wave. I mean, that force of the wave was tremendous. I mean, I was seeing some on a documentary where a rogue wave can have a force of roughly 100 tons per meter square. Nothing can survive that, at least when we go fishing on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then that's when.
So the radios were dead.
She went on down.
Yep.
Radios were dead. All electronics were dead. You weren't able to communicate with anybody, and boat stuffed, and boat immediately goes down, or was it sitting on the surface for?
I guess it was. It was just a few minutes that she was on. Then that was the thing that I guess was a big part. It said when this happened, you could have probably gone to any dock in the world and brought up this story, and they'd have told you the same thing as God saved those boys out there. If not that, then they said something about the surfboard.
Yeah.
But when she stuffed, and she went, and then she started listening to her port side, and that's why I had to step off, because I'm a safety guy by profession. That's what I went to school for, and so I probably should have known better, because I had already graduated. So when we went to leave, I put because we were going to be in Mexico, and we have in PA, everybody's got tents behind their boat. The tent was stacked on top of the life jackets. And with everything shifted, I could not get that tent out to get the life jackets. And so when Eric, when he said, get the life jackets, buddy, he dropped down into the cockpit. The reason he dropped down in the cockpit, because our EPIRB and our life raft were just inside the salon, just inside the door. That's where they had been sitting. And actually, we had a conversation that morning, and should we take the EPIRB and life raft out? And our comment was this: no, if we do that, that means we'll just have to clean it when we get there. Nothing ever happens during the daytime. Yeah. So then that's a big part of it, is we have such a fear of running at night. And there's this, I think this thought, at least there used to be this thought, that, a wood or composite boat is going to take a while to sink.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case with the Anigua. She went down pretty quick. As that air escapes, there's nothing there to hold her.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right, so you're left after just a couple minutes on top with a bait cooler, right? I mean, that's all.
That's it.
That's all that's left floating. You and a bait cooler.
Yes, sir. And when we finished the Lord's Prayer, she popped back up. She was upside down, and it was just a little bit of air that was in the lazarette, so it was a little bit of her bottom towards the stern, and just like with the wheels and rudders. But textbook, 101. How to survive at sea, get out of the water.
Yeah.
I mean, our bodies aren't made for it. And also in that moment, my surfboard came up. So this tells you something else. So that surfboard was up in the bow in the V berth.
Mm.
And for that thing to come out so quick shows how much she opened up.
Yeah.
And that was a tough part there too. So this is a question a lot of people like to ask me about the survival mindset. And of course, with military service, a lot of folks in the military know about what that survival mindset is. And I thought it was unique because when I was going for the surfboard, I had to swim through diesel fuel to do that. I'll tell you what, I knew where every single cut was on my body.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it just being in my eyes and in my mouth and in my nostrils, just the diesel slime, that slimy film was just everywhere.
Yeah.
But I knew I had to get to that bag. And my first thought was this: Lord, please don't let me throw up. I can't afford to lose this food that's in my stomach. I'm going to need it for the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like when we go through the trials of life, there's things we can do. We can feel sorry for ourselves, or we can look for the opportunities that we have to continue to push on and never give up. And so I pushed on through and got to that surfboard and was able to get it back to Eric, but she had gone down. Somehow that Eric had come out of Lazarette and she was out on her way to the depths.
Well, that surfboard's huge, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was pretty huge. There's something that's in the book related to the condition of the surfboard. That was something that was a weight throughout the whole experience.
What's that?
She was broken in half.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. See, I heard about this, that we were going to be doing this interview. 2 days ago, day before yesterday.
Yeah.
So I have not had the pleasure of reading the book yet. I'm going to certainly get it and read it. So
Yeah, he's a big reader.
some of these things I don't know yet. I've just tried to divine from Inglis and Michael. But yeah. So all right. So the surfboard's broken in half. But
Yes, sir. Of course it's not totally separated, but she's broken. So of course surfboards are made of fiberglass foam. They have a wood stringer down the middle. So eventually that foam was going to become saturated.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So you got two halves of a surfboard that's eventually going to sink, and you got a bake
And the surfboard wasn't inside of a board bag, so that was good.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And that was kind of funny because if you've ever been on a surfboard, if you get on one while it's in the bag, it's a totally different experience.
Yeah. All right. So no rope or anything to lash a bunch of stuff together.
Nothing initially.
Yeah.
So good point. So I never did get rope, but I remember at one point in time, the largest part of the boat that I ever saw, of course, as she went down to this crushing depths, parts of her were coming up, and
Right.
Later on, the piece of her sheer, like going up, like when you step off from the cockpit to walk up to the bow, maybe, I don't know, it wasn't very long, maybe 6 foot long at the most, 5 foot long at the most. And a couple inches high going up the side of the house, and a little piece of maybe a half a foot, something like that, of her deck when that came. But it had a piece of like Romex attached to the wire attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, of course, when they built them, they're stapled in just like they're stapled in a house. And I'll just never forget, trying with all my strength to rip those staples out, because just as you just saw it as something we could use to lash things together.
Right. Okay. And were you able to lash a bunch of stuff together ultimately?
Not really. So ultimately we did end up coming up, the most important thing for us to lash together was ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's just, there was a constant search for valuable debris, and that did come. And that was one of the unique things too that I realized, and actually more so in writing the book than I did at the moment, just remembering back to how the debris was. It was very unique how debris of similar buoyancy would come up approximately the same time and near each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually when I was out, so when she broke, she ended up forming two lines. One line went directly down sea, and the other line went off at an angle. And just going through that debris and seeing that similar type of thing, and it's just, and that also shows that the kind of current we were in, if it was shoving it up to a line like that.
Right.
And then to have a line to go off to the side that was pretty interesting. But that was the hope, is that the EPIRB or life raft would come up within that line somewhere.
Yeah. And it never did.
I never found it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm envisioning being at water level, and I'm sure a lot of people go, well, how could you not see all that, dude? Blah blah blah.
Oh.
But being at water level,
Yeah.
I can. There's no way you can't. I mean, even in 2-footers,
In any kind of chop, you can't see very far.
no, you're not going to see much of it. And people think stuff floats on top of the water, but what you're talking about buoyancy is it's right on surface, and even below the surface.
Yep. And you see that all the time. You get out there trolling along the grass line. You see stuff floating on top. You see stuff floating just under the surface. It's all about that buoyancy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So something else that's kind of interesting to add is, so in 1997 we had the strongest El Nino in recorded history, and I remember, you may remember too that just the weather patterns were weird that year, and it even extended into the spring of '98, which is of course when this happened. I remember that winter being in Palm Beach fishing out of, at Sailfish Marina, charter fishing, and we fished a lot of rough days, even Bahamas trips. So, we got handed to us some Bahamas trips, and just really, really, really rough. And that morning, of course, when we left, but when we were out there, I guess one of the biggest things was the storm that came on us while we were in the water. So it was pretty when we went down. But talking about that head level in the water, by the time that the boat happened to stumble on us, it was a good solid 8 foot out there.
All right, so
It was pretty terrifying.
Back up a second. So you're floating for how many hours until this? And you got a storm coming.
Well, yeah, and we're in it. The storm came on us.
All right, how long after you go in the water?
So it's the wind steadily increased. You know how it is when you're out there and you look and you're like, oh man, it's gonna be getting right here for long. We better get out of here. That's after a couple hours of being in the water, started to see those conditions where, with the way the breeze was coming across the top of the water, with the way the sky looked, we knew it was gonna get bad.
All right, so was it dumping rain?
No, we didn't have rain. It was just we had clouds and we had wind. No,
Yeah.
it's that whole partially cloudy mix. It wasn't like a squall.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a blow.
This was a blow. Yeah, it's something that's going to last. Okay, and so a couple hours in, you're in a blow, and it's jumped up to 6 to 8 foot.
Yep, and then
You can't see anything. I'm
we
sorry.
had and that was a challenge when you would see something, the ability to see it again.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it wasn't like you could just look, oh, there it is. Even if something's 50 yards away from you, you had to wait for your timing to see it.
Right, and the timing's got to be just right. You see a white dot out on the horizon, and then it's like, I'm down, it's up, I'm down.
Yeah.
You're trying to get that
Peekaboo.
timing.
Yeah, peekaboo.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Trying to get that timing just right.
Microseconds of vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so you and how long is this? I don't know. It's not a storm. I guess you called it a blow. How long does this blow last?
It was still blowing the next day when we got into Cancun. I know that.
All right. So,
and then beyond that, I was in shock, so I couldn't tell you.
yeah. So, all right. So, how long are you floating before? So, somebody came to get you, right? Who came to get you?
So nobody. That's the thing, and so that's the crazy part of the story is that we drifted approximately 20 miles to the southeast. So the wind's blowing out of the south. Here's the thing, is. So there did come a point where I did try to commit suicide out there when I just lost all hope, and we can kind of go into that process a little bit if you want. But so we had drifted.
How many hours are we talking before? I mean, you lose all hope.
I want to say that was probably 8 hours into it, 7 to 8 hours into it is when, because if you fished enough, you kind of have an idea what's going to happen, and I had let Satan get in my head and take me down that dark road.
So you're drifting 2-3 knots at this
Yep.
point, and you've been drifting 8 hours. So
we across the Gulf Stream and into the current.
Yeah.
Well, it's 11-hour drift.
11-hour drift total. Okay. All right. So let's talk about your
No fun.
your suicidal thoughts. You tried to kill yourself?
Yep.
How did that come about?
So it's hard to talk about still.
Yeah.
Sure. Feel free to skip it if you want to.
No, because it needs to be talked about. Because it's so this story. I know of 4 suicides that were in process that had been stopped because of the story.
I'm just going to say, if I put myself in there, I could completely see myself right there with your thoughts.
So here's how it kind of went. So start from the beginning. Failure. Captain gives the order, you follow your orders. That's just the way it is. My first order was get the life jackets. I failed at that. So and Eric he wasn't a spring chicken at the time. He's still around today. God bless him. And he was a big part of this book and writing it. Awesome captain. But he didn't have the ability to get around like I did. Mm-hmm. And so that's something else I want to bring up real quick. Is that so we had to kind of have a prove out because it was going to be the boss's family, the boss's wife and his daughter, and Eric and I on this 56-foot boat for like 3 months. We had to get along, so we did a prove out trip and went fished the Blue Marlin tournament in Chubb. So it was a weird thing. While I was in Chubb, I just had this I don't know, this feeling, this natural sense to swim. So every day when I get in from fishing, clean up, and I'd try to swim out the Mamarota Rock, which is just off the beach. It's a long swim, and I was conditioning myself. The point of that being that God didn't put us into anything that He doesn't prepare us for. Mm-hmm. He had prepared me for this. I like to free dive, I like to surf, and typically I don't just go swimming. Usually there's a purpose if I'm going to be in the water, and that was preparing me for the battle that I was about to go through. So physically prepared. Mentally, that's where the challenge was the failures, like I said, the initial failure with the life jackets. So Eric didn't have the ability to go out and search as I did. So there were several times where I would take the surfboard out and I would go search the debris line, knowing that. So initially, before it got too bad, she was still formed up in a line. So I remember the first time going out looking for the Eve Urban life raft or anything else we could find. Going down that diagonal line. But I had so much fear in my heart going down that diagonal line that I don't feel like I had the concentration that I need to have because I was worried about not being able to get back to the other line, like it breaking apart, not being able to get back to the other line and not being able to get back to Eric. Because this line is stretched out a long ways.
Can I stop you for just a second?
Yeah.
Man.
So this, you pointed out something that I've recognized too in my own problems. Most people listening to this will think, this interview or reading your book will think the scariest thing in your mind is getting eaten by a shark. Okay. I spent a lot of time in the water myself, and I can tell you, being in this situation, the scariest thing for me was not getting eaten by a shark. The scariest thing was losing my partner.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Isn't that, I don't know why that's the case. I know why, but you obviously had that same experience. I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, but were you concerned about sharks at the time?
Oh, a little. So we had a little school and the dolphin or mahi comes swimming in there, and that was kind of funny looking at them. Just thinking about how beautiful they were down there, and they swimming around us, and then the thought did pop in. Daggone, I wonder what's going to be behind them. Yeah. So that was like the toe hole, the little toe getting in the door,
right,
for the shark thing. Yeah. But I'll get to that because that's a great point that you made. Related to the team thing and as far as that versus the sharks. Yeah. So basically I was a failure on that mission. I did got back to the main line, traveled that main line, didn't find it. But our lo and behold, our 2 flare kits popped up that we had right to Eric. And so he had them. And so we did have a plane fly over a cruise ship going by. That was a crush. So we go through so many flares.
Oh, that would kill
on
me.
that cruise ship. So that was the thing. So fishing out here, and I know you came up here and did the striper fishing.
Yep.
But that where our Chesapeake Light Tower is 13 miles off the beach, and we kind of gauge a lot of things based on distance, knowing that's there. So I figured that cruise ship was probably 11 miles. When I sat down and wrote, and I really kind of got into the math of the distance to the horizon, thinking about where we were on the waves and stuff like that. So first of all, fishing out of here, we have so much military in the area. It's not uncommon we're more likely to see a Navy hospital ship than we are a cruise ship, even though there are some cruises that go out of Norfolk. So initially, when I saw the white speck, kind of like you mentioned the white speck earlier, I kind of chuckled to myself as I thought, and I started, and we knew it was a ship. I'm like thinking, how cool is this? It might be the Mercy, or one of the Navy hospital ships because there's going to be a pluck us out. And then saw it was a cruise ship. Then there was like a heightened sense of hope because knowing of all the eyes that were on there. But seeing that cruise ship go over the horizon was stern to us was pretty. That was tough. Yeah. That was a blow. So that being said, with all that going on, then the conditions. So Eric was starting to feel lose feeling in his lower extremities. And
was he injured, or this was just
no, just hypothermia was kicking in.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was when it was like, man, it was harder to see the positives. It was harder to see the light, basically. Just the more darkness was taking over with the mental side of it. And so then the wind was blowing pretty good. Started to get a little bit choppier more, and could tell the debris line was starting to bust up a little bit. So that's when Eric and I had the conversation, is that, and this was really the only time we had anything that was direct, like we might not make it. Mm-hmm. And it was like, Eric was like, buddy, we got to have the EPIRB. We've got to get the EPIRB if we're going to make it out of this. Mm-hmm. It was like, yes, sir, Cap. So that was the hard thing to do. Knowing, and the line was really stretched out now because, we're good into the afternoon, and it was just like, man, this is going to be one of the hardest things in my life, because I knew that when I left Eric that time, I would probably never see him again. And I told him, I said, Eric, because think about it, if I find out, how would I get the life raft back to him? He couldn't have come to me. If I'd have left the life raft, I would probably never would have found it again.
Right.
But I knew that if I deployed the EPIRB, they would come to me. And that was just a tremendous feeling of guilt with that thought. And I told Eric, I said, when I pull this thing, we're not going to stop looking until we find you. Because that was, at that point, that was our only hope then. At least the only hope that we could see. So then I got out there and got down, and I told Eric I feel like I need to cover that diagonal line a little bit better. And so I did. Got to the end of it. By the time I got to the end of the means, it was probably blowing a good, solid 20, even higher gust then, and line was busting apart. So I figured if I went through the trough, I might be able to pick up that line that went, up-sea, down-sea. So now the wind and the swell are kind of going across each other, because it was a northeast swell, and now you got that southeast wind on top of it, and it's kind of mixing it up a little bit. And then the thoughts of the sharks, that started wearing me down. And then realizing that I was becoming hypothermic. Mm-hmm. All those thoughts were going over and over my head, and it's, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die out here. Eric's going to die. It's your fault that Eric's going to die.
Did you mention the water temperature? I'm sorry.
No, I didn't. So the water temperature was, the last time I looked at the water temperature gauge, it was 79 degrees.
Yep.
And that was another challenge. Well, let me finish this part, and I'll tell you about that, the unique part about the water temperature. So anyway, and that's, so again, my degree is in safety, and part of that is industrial hygiene. So and part of that is understanding the biological indices and how different things affect the body, as far as whether it's temperature, chemicals, whatever. And I realized what was going on. It was like, you're hey dummy, think about what you went to school for. I remember that this was a specific thought. Hey dummy, think about what you went to school for. Your core is dropping and you can't control it. You're going to die. So we did find some life jackets did pop up, but they were like our backup life jackets for like cruises. So they were the type of life jackets made for a pond. That life jacket was already starting to rip because of those sea conditions. And looking at that life jacket, seeing the tear, and it was like, this thing isn't going to make it. And knowing that that class of life jacket isn't made for the ocean, and it's becoming more and more buoyant. It's not made for an extended exposure. So knowing that the life jacket would be no good at some point in time, that was way off. All these things were just building up in my head. The sharks, and then drowning, and just back and forth between the sharks and the drowning. And finally, I came to a decision. And that decision was, I would rather drown than get ripped apart alive by sharks. Mm-hmm. And that's when, and this was hard to write about. Actually, my wife told me that night, I woke up 3 times screaming.
I can imagine.
While I was writing this. And so, and I planned to detail my death, as far as doing a lot of freedom. I knew how far down I had to go. And once I got to that point, I would make sure that I exhausted all air out of my lungs to remove any of that buoyancy. And then I was going to shove myself down even further, knowing I wouldn't be able to get back to the top. That was my plan. Said my prayer, made my peace. I didn't want to die, but I knew I was going to die. I think that's part of the difference. And so I was in the pride, and it was bad, really, really rough. So I took my life jacket off and kind of let that go. And when I was in the process of rolling under, it was unbelievable. Just the feeling of strength and warmth that overcame my body. So I want to be clear about something. Of course, when we're hunting out there, we get what's the first thing that gets cold? Our fingers and our toes, right? Because our body's doing what it's designed to do. It's those vessels are constricting to keep the warmer blood towards your core. But your body will get to a point where it's like done, and those vessels will dilate. They'll open up, and the blood will rush to those extremities, and there will be a warm sensation. I was nowhere near that point. I had so much dexterity. There was things I was doing that I wouldn't be able to do if I was at that point. And so when that happened, my body, again, going to roll over, the feeling of strength, the feeling of warmth. So it stopped me. And so I grabbed the life jacket real quick before it floated off, and I get my hands on the surfboard and kind of get myself positioned on the surfboard best I could. And back over my right shoulder, there's no doubt, I wasn't acting very much like a Christian then in my life, but I'd been going to church since I was a kid, and over my back right shoulder, I heard, "John, you spend a lot of time out here. Pick your line and paddle it." And I know because when I heard it in that ear, I turned and I looked. And y'all know this: the sound, a rough ocean consumes all sound, and there's nothing that you could hear but the roar. But the peace that was there was amazing, and I wish I could take the faith that I had in that moment and just give that mustard seed to everybody that's going through a hard time to carry them through. That was something that I had a hard time with. I had a very hard time of putting this part in the book because I was afraid that somebody that's thinking about ending their life would read that part of the book and think that the same might happen for them. So I truly struggled with it. And then, was praying one day, and it's like, it's pretty clear. His ways aren't our ways. So that's why I decided to make sure I put it in the book. And because people needed to know about that miracle. Whether they believe it or not, that's up to them, and whether they think I'm an honest person or not. But as far as the drift goes and where we were picked up, that kind of proves it, that it was a miracle.
How long between that time period where you attempted suicide and when you were picked up?
I want to say it was probably 3 hours, something like that.
So, obviously in hindsight,
and that was in the worst of it too. It is. That's when everything in front of our eyes was like, in front of our eyes, you're going to die out here. There is no way. You're going to survive these conditions.
Right. No, I think that's a strong metaphor. You got impossible odds ahead of you, and yet 3 hours away you're saved. Right. 3 hours floating. Don't get me wrong. 3 hours floating on the ocean is a very, very long time. But in the grand scheme of things, your choice is suicide or 3 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours from now.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and not knowing that, not knowing how long it was going to be. So here's the cool thing: is living where I live, there's a lot of uniquely trained military people around here, and that was so. This was so funny. So when this whole process started, I prayed, Lord, put the right people in the right places. So the book kind of goes into the story, and then it kind of gets into some of the science behind it, and then it kind of gets more into some other things, just some neat stories about today, and just faith, and just having faith in the Lord to carry you through. But anyway, so I was speaking to a group of a youth group, and here in Virginia Beach, and the group is mainly, most of the kids in there, their fathers were SEALs, and so one of the gentlemen that was one of the youth group leaders, he's actually was a medic with DEV Group, Team 6, and So anyway, so I got to the part that part of the story about the hypothermia, and I was like, I've always had a hard time with this. Well, he kind of stands up and says two words that made perfect sense: specific gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went into explain it that and it made sense. Why do we float in warmer and tropical water? Well, because it's denser, right?
Right.
And it's denser, the specific gravity is greater in the water than it is within our bodies. I mean, of course, we have a lot of salt in our bodies and water in our bodies. So he explained that literally what was happening is that the water was killing us, and he explained how because of the specific gravity, it was basically pulling the water out of our body to try to get to equilibrium. And I figure if anybody knows, this guy would know.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But I still didn't have like the full wrap around it to be able to feel confident in writing it. So most of this book I wrote in my back pasture, sitting in the camper, and I'm like, Lord, I don't know what to say. No sooner than that, my phone rings. It's my buddy that lives across the field from me. He's a Navy diver, and my kids are in 4-H. It's his kid's first year in the 4-H Livestock Club, and he's like, man, I don't have a clue how to build a goat pen. Can you please go to Tractor Supply with me? So he and I talked, and he gets it. I mean, because he's done workups down there in that very area where we went down. And when we were done, he was like, you know what? I'm going to send you a copy of the Navy Dive Manual. I'm like, right there it is. Thank you. What better resource could I cite than the U.S. Navy Dive Manual for the effects of the water on the body?
Yeah, an 80-degree water will kill you all day long.
That's what I was thinking. You can't.
Yeah.
People don't realize that, but I mean, 80-degree water will absolutely kill you. And that's like, it's not quite bath water, but that's warm water. But your body isn't 80 degrees.
No, sir.
Your body's not designed to be at 80 degrees, not for any extended period of time. It'll kill you absolutely dead, just like 35-degree water will kill you. And
it just takes a little bit longer.
Just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to happen though.
Yep, it'll happen. No doubt about it.
So that's one of the unique things that that in a way is gives me closure is just with talking with some of those operators, and just when a lot of times they'll ask, well, how long they'll ask about, because they have an idea about the water temperature from doing training down there. And when I tell them how long I was in the water, that's like just the look on their face, like, dude, you should be dead.
Yeah, it's a long time. So I hate to jump forward, but we're at like hour 10 or 11 now, and obviously, you've made it past your low point, and something happens, right? I mean, how do you get saved?
So So you remember the Orion, the canisters, like they look like a little barrel that you would twist and lock those flare kits?
Yeah.
Yep.
I've got one in my boat right
I
now.
got one on my boat.
Yeah.
All right. They make a great product, but that canister's a piece of junk.
Yeah, it is.
So that's what happened. So our 25 mil gun, we had of course, with all the signals, and we had a wave actually hit that and broke that apart. So we lost some of those flares.
Okay.
Which was crushing. And I'll tell you what, Eric had done an amazing job. I mean, he has stuffed as many flares and those things as he could, definitely beyond what comes in them. And so, we were in a situation, we were down to we had one stick flare. Here's another thing. So after that thing fell apart, we decided that with our 12 gauge pistol that we still had, we had 2 flares left on that card that, runs across the back of the handle.
Yep.
And while I was decided to put that inside the surfboard bag, we figured that'd be the safest place. And while I was doing that, a wave hit me. And when it hit me, the zipper caught one of the bullets and popped it off the card. And I remember watching that thing sink down.
Oh,
just thinking, man. But anyway, so I had that in the surfboard bag. And and we had this, and there's a lot of other things that happened. People can check that out in the book. The sequence of miracles were amazing, and just all the other little things as far as the highs and lows. But as we were floating there, and we were lashed together. Find some surfboard leashes to do that with that were in something. But we decided again we weren't going to separate. And one of the reasons for that is because we would kind of watch each other. By this point in time, we were done watching the sky and watching across the horizon. We just were, it's just too rough. And so what we do is we kind of watch each other. And this is something that a lot of people might not think about, but what would happen is Portuguese man of war would come by. So we had to do that in order to communicate with, to be able to dodge, because figure if you got wrapped up in one of those, that'd take a lot out of you.
Yeah.
So we were doing that, and look over and I see a flare floating, and I told Eric, I said, Cap, I think that might be a good one. Can I go get it? He did. Sure, go ahead, buddy. So that was a big thing for me to unhook from him, because it wasn't that far away. But again, with those seas, the peekaboo thing, and started making my way, upwind to head towards it and get to it, and it's good, and it's like, man, what a blessing that was to have one good flare, to find, and in that time frame, as I was trying to swim back to him, I could hear him start to scream. So, and I could tell there was a lot of excitement in his voice when he was screaming. So my initial thought was he was getting eaten by sharks. So, I started just digging to him to get to him as hard and fast as I could. So that's something to think about. When the sharks come in your life, what are you going to do? Are you going to run and hide, or are you going to dig to it to help your friend, to help your wife, help your kids, help your brother, help your sister? What are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? So anyway, as I was digging back to him, I heard him screaming, "It's a fish boat! It's a fish boat! It's a fish boat!" And sure enough, we saw it was, got to him, and he had kind of rolled off the surfboard again. That thing has lost a lot. Pretty much was nowhere near as buoyant as it started off with. So when he did that, he started to unzip the back, and as I got to him, tell you what, it's hard striking a flare in the water. Yeah. We end up getting it down, but anyway, so end up getting the other flare struck, the hand flare, handed that to him, and it was a 50-foot Bertram tower boat that was kind of going off to our side. Maybe like 3/4 mile, half mile, not very far. And as that boat was going, so I got the last bullet into the flare gun and kind of got myself on the, straddled the surfboard a little bit best I could. And I was trying to time it when he would come down, and, you'd have the splash from the bow. Of course, he wasn't going very fast. They're like 10 knot in it, but still, there was still, wet water coming up whenever they go into a sea. And so I was trying to time that and squeeze the trigger, kind of angle it off his front quarter. Hopefully he would see it. And then right about that time, I just heard this, wow, whoa, whoa, whoa. With it pulling it, and turn around and look, and there's the bow of the 72-foot Viking, the ditch digger. I'm talking like right there, like it was like, oh wow, like awesome, and then it was like, oh no, we'll get chopped up now, because it was their course was directly over top of us.
Wow.
And then John Colder did an amazing job of spinning that thing around, and they got the door open. And I'll never forget this part either, because it made me I felt just so much guilt. So as we were in, he spun around in those big seas. It was amazing how he did it. Great skill. And getting to us, and then having that the cockpit door open. Of course, those boats are made to take water in the cockpit, but I'll never forget, as Eric and I were getting kind of closer to the door to come in, a white cap broke and hit, and and washed me inside. And just, I guess adrenaline took over from there. Like kind of like shoved the mate across the cockpit to get back to Eric to pull him in, because I just felt so bad that I got in that boat before my captain.
But you both got in.
Yeah, we both got in, and then that's when I guess that's when pretty much started going to shock. That's when first cried for the first time. Then for the whole thing, it just all with, I guess, for the relief.
Yeah. Wasn't that what happens, though? I mean,
I can't imagine.
That's always sort of seems to be what happens. Is you run on adrenaline, and then the adrenaline dies, and when the adrenaline dies, you get sick, right? I mean, everything stopped working the way they're supposed to work. So y'all obviously got sick, and what happened? Did they wrapped you up in blankets, took you in? How far along?
yeah. Well, it was just kind of funny, because so I'd recognized the mate and didn't know him well, but knew him from the year prior fishing in Mexico, and of course Eric knew John very well. So so this was an enclosed fly bridge. So on some of the closed fly bridge, they'll have a spiral staircase in the salon that goes up to the bridge.
Right.
So of course the mate got us in there, and then then he went up on the bridge, and then John comes down. And it's funny. The first thing he asks is, he goes, "Can I get y'all a rum and coke?" They're like, "No, water."
Yeah. No rum
like
and coke.
any good salty captain would do.
Yeah. No rum and coke right now. All right. So how long did it take you to recover?
I don't think I really snapped out of it until I got back here to Virginia Beach.
Well, hang on a minute now. You go to Mexico first, or do you?
Yes, we go to Mexico first.
Because you were closer to Mexico than you were to Florida, I guess.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too.
Oh, wow.
And that's what they were en route to Mexico. So here's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
So usually when we make that run, we make the run just it's like 350 miles, figure 370 or whatever, because you're going to be bucking the Gulf Stream, and you just make a straight shot from Key West to Isla is your course.
Right.
So here's what makes this story amazing. Again, I had mentioned earlier that we were in the Gulf Stream. Well, if you aren't, it's like the Gulf Stream is nothing but a river in the ocean, right? If you're in a river, where are you going to go if you aren't swimming across it?
Yeah,
with it.
I was thinking about this earlier too when you said that guy's course was right on top of you. I mean, that's such a weird. Why would he be 20 miles off course?
Yep.
So that's where this is going to get to is so if you're in a river, you're going to be. So we should have just been going. We figured that we were going to be going up to the to the northeast.
Yeah.
East northeast, and then we figured, and that's one of the things we figured if we got around to the around the Straits of Florida, the Bahamas Bank, so that's when we knew the bull sharks would rip us apart. So anyway, so the Sansui, which was the Bertram, and then the Ditch Digger, which was the Viking,
which both have
they
autopilot.
They left just before 9:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
At 9:00 in the morning, there was a call that went from, because again we didn't have the weather. Eric did get a weather routers before our journey, and did his float plan and all that. So today everything's at our fingertips. I mean, we can pull up and overlay different weather apps and everything right there on the bridge.
Yeah.
With our radar. Didn't have that back then. So a call went from Cancun to Key West at 9:00. That call was, "Don't send any boats. It's getting bad." Well, right about that time, the Sansui, and just before that, so if somebody had to go up to the ship store to go to the bathroom or wanted to go get a drink or whatever, I might not be here today.
Right.
Just before that, just before 9 a.m., those two vessels pulled out, left the marina.
Yeah, they're already on their way.
They get out there, and as soon as they get there, they know they're seeing that things are getting right. So they're again, back then most boats did the 10-knot shuffle across there because most boats couldn't make it during the daytime. They made it, you would just make a 2-day crossing out of it. Yeah. We were a little bit faster and we held the fuel so we could make it in a day. So they got out there and they realized this is bad. So then they changed course to go to Cuba.
I never realized how close. I'm still over here amazed at the map at how close Key West is to Cancun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never realized that.
I mean, it's like it's 350.
And you're lucky. 50 miles. I mean, honestly, you're lucky anybody was actually sitting on the bridge, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, on a trip like that, a lot of times, you hit the autopilot and you go to the salon.
I always watch. I don't ever allow anybody to leave the bridge.
Well, you should, but not everybody's as mindful as you are, as you know. I mean, a lot of times on a trip like that, you set the autopilot, you go down, make yourself a drink, something to eat, come back up, go back down, take a pee, come back up. I mean, it's not unusual for a captain to be missing from the bridge for quite a few minutes on a trip like that.
Right.
So you're lucky somebody was even watching. I mean, they all could have been down in the salon and could have got run over.
One of the things that just blows my mind still to this day is that every circumstance that happened needed to happen, such as the boats leaving with 5 minutes earlier than it should have. The weather had to change in order to change and alter their course. Mm-hmm. And the odds of you running, we've all been offshore. We know the odds are beyond astronomical. It's just, you'll never convince me that without God's intervention, there was absolutely no chance of survival, period.
Yeah.
Nope.
And
So that, go ahead.
no, it's just still, it's so amazing. It just,
Yep.
it's beyond me being able to fathom the circumstance, and it's beyond me being able to fathom the probability of being surviving without the intervention of the good Lord.
Yep.
Yep, that's right.
So then that's where this kind of led to, is with them leaving when they did, how it was, and the fact that we drifted into the wind, across the current, to be placed in the path of the only other two boats that were making the crossing that day.
Yeah.
You like I said, what happened when I tried to kill myself? That's whether you think I'm an honest person or not. But this is science, and these are points, and you can't deny it. It can't be denied.
Yeah.
It proves that that God is real. I mean, and as much that it's happened then, I've seen so much more now, and that's a unique thing. To the point you're just making, Michael, is that you could have run into any of those guys that were on that dock down there in Mexico, then there is no doubt they're mine.
Mm-hmm.
They know, they're like, there's no way that y'all should have ended up where you ended up.
Yeah.
Well, God's infinite wisdom, in my opinion, is just it's so mind baffling that your experience, in '98, is reinforcing my faith and the faith in many others today through your experience.
Yep.
Because it's, we're all lost. We are all
Yes, sir.
lost. We are not. Although we're not in the ocean, and although we're not fighting for every breath, we're all lost. And without the faith, there's no hope for us. There's no surviving without, the faith. And, as you spoke earlier about the foxholes, that is true. That is true. When everything is going well in life, I think we tend to let our faith down, you might say. And it kind of ease off, but it doesn't take but just a moment. The good Lord will wake you up in a hurry. And I needed to read this book. This book fell into my life, and it was a very positive thing for me because it was reinforcing my faith. I am blessed to that everything is going well in my life, and my wife's life.
Just for a little behind the scenes story on Michael. Michael's also a liver transplant recipient. Two times.
Mm-hmm.
And you had cancer as well, or no?
Liver cancer. Liver cancer is what I was originally diagnosed with. I had a liver transplant. That liver failed. Had a second liver. Had COVID. My wife had breast cancer. She had double mastectomy, reconstruction. Then through the chemo, it caused her bones to be brittle, and she's ruptured 3 discs. She's had surgery on one, waiting on potential surgery for now. And during those times, we were all about God. Our faith was strong because that was our only hope. And now, our lives are going well. We survived, and He watched us go through it. And so I'm not saying that our faith is low. That's not it. But it's idle.
Right.
It's idle. And after reading this book, it was just like when I finally took a breath after, about halfway through the book, I took a breath, and then I didn't take another breath until you got to Mexico. But nowadays, it's just, I needed it, and it put me back in touch with reality, and who our eternal Savior is, and how everything is not going to be good forever.
Nope.
And Michael, where'd you get the book?
I ordered it off Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I read it through Audible.
All right, Johnny,
Well, not Audible, but
where all is the book? Where could it be found?
Well, you can get it through just about any place you get books. You know, you may have to order it, but Amazon is probably the biggest where most of them come from. And so right now we are working on the hardcover. So there's going to be.
It's in on Amazon.
Amazon, yeah. And I'll share all that. I'll share all the link. He sent it to me. I've got all the links for that.
Okay, all right. I wanted to make sure Inglis had them, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you've already given them to him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've got the links for that, and we'll share that as well.
How can I get a signed copy? I want a signed copy.
I was just about to ask the same thing.
I knew those questions were coming.
Hey, I think I might know somebody who can get that to you.
Hey, are you still fishing? You still run boats?
Yeah, I have. So and that's the ironic thing. So the gentleman that I've been running the boat for so you would let me back up here. So you would think that this event would have made a big change in my life.
Oh, I
mean,
yeah, I don't know about going fishing again.
God basically showed himself to me, and that's one of the things that I stay humble in this, man, because it's I know this isn't me, but that's not. So being lost at sea wasn't my greatest fear. My greatest fear was something called divorce. And failure as a husband and a father was my greatest fear, no matter what. Yeah.
Check.
And a few years ago, I found myself in a divorce and crushed. And and I went, I went to church my whole life, sitting in Blackwater Baptist Church. Actually, we're getting ready to have our 250th anniversary next year. Starting to plan that, but and I'd seen amazing things happen in that church. I've seen, because I live in the south end of Virginia Beach. It's it's a rural farming community. I remember droughts when I was a kid, and we'd have to bring out chairs and put them in the aisles because every single farmer in town was there, and we'd sing showers of blessing in every time it rained. So, you would think. And I considered myself to be a Christian, but I really wasn't living that way. I was just trying to maybe be a little bit better. What I felt was a little bit better than my buddies, which wasn't saying much for any of my actions. And just wide open, And but when the loss of my family was inevitable, I finally broke down. Like, what do you want? What do you want from me? And actually, my ex-wife, her father had a conversation with me during this time frame. And he was like, "Have you truly sold out for Jesus?" And I kind of put my face, face to the floor, and I prayed and I cried out. And it was in that moment. And he said this to me. The Holy Spirit was like, "Look." He said, "This is kind of funny in a way because he said, it's time to tell my story." And I told the Creator of the universe, "I'm not into glorifying myself." He said, "You aren't glorifying you, you're glorifying me." That's when he took the story and put power in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I am so small of it. This isn't my story. I was just there for the ride. I was just there as a messenger. It's all his story.
When I met Michael this morning, I said to him, the book's 50% about that being left in the ocean. I can already tell, and I hadn't read it yet.
Yeah, it was about 50%. Getting to I don't have a favorite front or favorite half. The good was I held my breath for, basically the whole book. But it's just, I don't know. It's the type book that, if you need faith, you need to read the book. If you need to strengthen your faith, you need to read the book.
If you doubt faith?
If you doubt faith, you definitely need to read the book. Yep. And I think Johnny, you can tell in the wording that Johnny was the author, but good Lord was doing the writing. It's really, really obvious that it's coming from a higher power. Johnny's just the tool that is being used, and it's an amazing book. I highly recommend it.
Yep. Amen.
So,
Hey,
and this is kind
Go
of
ahead.
funny, and it just so when we were texting earlier, mentioned that Satan didn't want the story out, and so the things that happened to stop this were incredible. Even to the point of it was an amazing program that the book was written through. It's called, if anybody's thinking about writing a book, I would strongly recommend this program. It's called Creators Institute. You can Google it online. Eric Koester is the guy that created this program. Just listen. His story is kind of neat as far as as far as being a professor at Georgetown University. And I was thinking, man, how are they going to take this? And it was amazing. Just the cohort of other authors, and I could start talking within our cohort because a lot of it was via Zoom with COVID and all, and just sharing a little bit of this and seeing the transition discussion of the breakout to where people were talking about the things that we're thankful for. But it's just in that transition right into so the program was set up. It was crowdfunded, which was so humbling that the timing with this whole thing has been incredible. From the timing of the things that happened to the water to the final drive for this book was actually during the Virginia Beach Billfish tournament, which is our big tournament here. And everything was fully funded. There were people that were prepared to, if they had to pay the whole bill, they would have paid the whole bill. As far as one of my old owners and even with gentleman that was in Blue Water Yacht Sales. It was just they were going to make sure the story got out there because they believed in it enough. And to the related to even to the timing of now. But I've been went through the divorce. Then my phone started ringing to ask me to come speak. I would come speak, and then the doors were just opening for that. And,
Yeah.
Then from there, I'll never forget. I was was the mate for the gentleman for Joe Whittington, who's was my owner of the Desperado that had been Viking and running for the last couple of years. So one night it was late November, freezing cold outside. I was getting the boat ready because the captain, Michael, who would run the boat in Florida, was coming up to get it to run it down. So I was finishing up the teak. It's like 9:30 at night. Here comes the boss and his whole family out there in their pajamas. Climb on the boat, and I shared the story with him. Joe, I told him a little bit of the story, but never the full thing. And of course, his wife and daughter hadn't heard it. And then afterwards, they kind of had a talk with me. I'm like, you've got to write this. And so just it worked out with, the whole thing with New Degree Press and with Creators Institute through Tiffany Mosier, who wrote a book. She's a good friend of my wife, and it's called Beauty Beyond the Threshold. We met with her, got rigged up with this. And but that night on that boat, it was just a weight that was put on me that was unreal. Actually, when I got off the boat and when I was done and sat in my truck, it's like 10:30 at night. I'm in their driveway crying in my truck for like 15 minutes. And then, the doors just opened.
That's awesome.
Yep, it is. And I'll tell you what, I've got all this information to share. We'll put it up actually with the podcast when we put it up. But also, I'll put up all the other groups that you're involved with. And I know you had, sent me some info on some other stuff. And maybe I can have you back on while the senator is gone, and we'll talk about those groups. I think those will be great to have on, and we'll get that set
definitely.
up. Yeah, and we'll get your friends set up with us. Go ahead.
Yeah, if anybody's thinking about going, and looking for somebody to fish with in Islamorada, Islamorada Coastal Adventures. We've been communicating a lot. He that would be a unique opportunity to go fishing with a true American hero. He was at the highest level for guys with boots on the ground over there. Great guy, and he's just sent me messages about how the book has touched him, and I am so humbled in the way that the book has been moving through. And help some of the guys in the SEAL teams because, they do a lot to protect us and just to be able to give something back because, that's the thing and we kind of got into it a little earlier about the idle time. And, there's a group of people out there now across the military that have had the only time ever where we have a group of people that has spent an entire career at war.
Oh yeah.
And that takes a toll on the body, and definitely the mind. And that's one of the things. So you had mentioned with the groups, Valhalla's Vision Force. Jimmy Hensky is a great guy. He's a former command with SEAL Team 6. He's doing amazing things to help people. And then also, so if you read the book, you're gonna hear about a gentleman that called me in tears. That guy named Scott. He was with Virginia Beach Police Department, just recently retired, but he's helping out there at Valhalla's Forge. And they're doing amazing things as far as supporting, those that are in the line of fire now, which are our police and first responders. A lot of people don't realize what they go through and the amount of horrific evil things that they see on a daily basis.
But we don't need them. But we don't need them.
Yeah. And that's that's one thing too with the timing of this book. We're in a time where I think as a nation we need to cry out. You get through the Old Testament, you look, people fall away, but every time they cry out to the Lord, He's quick to return. It's scary what's going on. I'm fortunate to be able to be in an area where basically, if you live here in this area, when something's going on in the world. But to know some of the people that I know, and a lot of people, this whole thing with China is a real threat. I mean, it's serious stuff. And when you look, and I was just thinking about this yesterday, is when you look at and you read the Old Testament, and when people turned away, and look, God allowed the Philistines to take over the Israelites. They were His people. Yep. But what happened? There was a turn back to the Lord. We need to turn back to the Lord before something happens.
Yep.
As a country.
Yep. Johnny, thank you so much. Great way to end it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for sharing your story. God bless you. And I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing more than your story, but sharing your heart with us.
Yeah, I think that's what I appreciate the most, my friend. And I'm glad I'm getting to know you now, Johnny.
Oh, thank you so much, and I appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate, please, everybody listening to this, if you could just share with everybody, and word of mouth is one of the biggest ways to get this story out there, this message of hope. Again, it's not me.
Amen. We're gonna get it out there and share it for you, buddy. We're gonna share it for you, and Michael, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, listen, Johnny, you have a great one. I'll get all this information up, and I'll get everything to you so that you can share it over there too. But we'll get that thing up this afternoon, my friend. Okay?
Sounds great. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Johnny.
Take care.
All right, y'all. Wow. All right.
Powerful interview.
Very, very powerful.
Yep, good stuff.
All right, real quick. Now that he's not on there, you had a diving incident.
Yeah.
That left you out there too, right?
Oh yeah, I have.
3 or 4 hours you drifted?
9.
9?
Yeah, 9.
Oh, God, I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah. Do you remember it?
I had heard it, yeah.
Yeah. It was it was a while ago, but I had a lot of the same feelings.
They left you, right?
Yeah. Had a lot of the same feelings listening.
Absolutely.
Listening to his story. But hey. Anyway, his story is very powerful, and
it is.
And I think it's tremendous that we were able to record it.
Yeah, I'm glad we did, and I appreciate him for coming on. Michael, I appreciate you coming in, and hey, look here, again, you posted that on Facebook, and I saw it, and maybe we put it on here, maybe it makes a difference.
Oh, maybe it does. It definitely reinforced my faith at a time that I needed it reinforced, and so, that was the wonderful thing, for me, so.
Well, I tell you what, I appreciate it. And Senator, I know we're gonna have you on again beforehand, so we won't say our goodbyes yet. But anyway,
okay.
Y'all keep my senator friend in your prayers. I swear to God, y'all. I'm pouring my heart out there. This guy is like one of my favorite people in the friggin' world. Y'all, please pray for protection for him. Pray for protection for his family while he's gone and all our soldiers over there. Listen to me y'all, I don't normally do this. I'm sorry.
You're good.
You're good, buddy.
You're good. Thank you. I need it.
I'm sorry.
I need it. The family needs it.
I'm sorry.
More than me, the family needs it.
I was told to not make a post on Memorial Day because, again, I'm a huge fan. He's not just my business partner. He's a friend. But I was told not to make a post on Memorial Day that it would have bothered Renee. But all I'm saying is this much. You're a hero to a lot of people, brother.
Thank you.
Amen.
We are very lucky to have you as our senator and as a friend.
I appreciate
All right.
it very
God
much.
dang it. All right, anyway. All right, so here we go. This has been a interesting episode of Pin, Spur, and Feathers. No doubt about it. But we're going to be back next week. Y'all, make sure you click like, subscribe, share this thing with everybody, okay? And we'll get all the information up there on the book. And I want to thank Captain Johnny for joining us. And again, Captain Michael Stone. I'm going to call you Captain. Captain Michael Stone, my good friend for a long time. Thank you for joining us. And again, folks, you can listen to us at TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com or on all the platforms. Go find it. Click like, subscribe. We'll be back next week talking pin, spur, and feathers here on Trilogy Outdoors. Freeman Boat Works and Trilogy Outdoors are proud to announce the addition of Freeman Boat Works to our family of incredible partners. Billy Freeman and his team at Freeman Boat Works epitomize the American dream. From building the first boat in Billy's backyard to a 150,000 square foot state-of-the-art manufacturing plant over the past 15 years, they are building one of the most sought-after boats in the U.S. and beyond. These incredible fishing platforms are built in South Carolina and are second to none in stability, speed, and performance overall. These catamaran designs are engineered not only to get you to the fish fast, but comfortably too. Years of refining designs and pioneering the modern performance fishing catamaran is why Freeman Boat Works is the #1 choice for some of the biggest names in the fishing industry. If it's long runs in the Gulf or the Carolinas, or days you can go fishing in South Florida when most center consoles stay at the dock, Freeman Boat Works is at the forefront in all categories. For more information on Freeman Boat Works and their 6 available models, visit www.freemanboatworks.com. Redefine your expectations.
For over 8 years, GovWorld Auctions has been solving surplus issues for municipalities and counties in South Carolina and beyond. Their turnkey customer service has made them one of the best in the business here in the U.S., and they are located right here in our home state of South Carolina. If you're looking for tractors, heavy machines, and vehicles, just to name a few, our partners at GovWorld have you covered. The process is simple, and their experts will come to you to inspect, photograph, and video all items before they make them available to everyone in the world for the bidding process. GovWorld online auctions are supported by mailers, emails, and promotion to the biggest buyers in the country, and they get results and the highest dollar possible for your items. Don't go out of state to another auction company. Support business here in South Carolina and let GovWorld get you top dollar for your items and put the money back in your city, municipality, or county. Give GovWorld a call or visit their website, govworld.com, for more info and to set up a visit with one of their experts to get you in the next auction. Don't let valuable items just sit behind a fence. Give GovWorld a call and start turning them into money today. Recently, Senator Goldfinch and myself were introduced to Healthy Cell and their incredible line of products. Stephen started on a regimen of taking Focus and Recall after each daily workout to help his body recover from the physical demand of a workout and to help boost his focus and brain power that he needs on long days on the Senate floor. For myself, the last few years, I've been struggling to get the recommended amount of vitamins and nutrients in my body due to decreased appetite. When I was introduced to Bioactive Multi, I was excited to start a daily regimen that I felt would help my performance both on and off the water and would give me more energy to get through long days and increase my productivity. With Bioactive Multi, I know that I am getting the FDA daily recommended amounts, and with the mixed berry flavor and the ease of swallowing, my body is able to absorb these vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants through the proprietary gel format that Healthy Cell has created. This allows my body to quickly absorb and start using these valuable nutrients to help me get through long busy days, just like we all go through in our daily lives. Go visit healthycell.com/trilogy and use our promo code TRILOGY, all caps, to receive 20% off of your first order and start living a better life today. Trilogy Outdoors Podcast is a product of Trilogy Outdoors Media. All views and opinions of our hosts and guests are not necessarily those of our sponsors. Trilogy Outdoors is produced and edited by Trilogy Outdoors Media. Be sure to follow us on all the podcast platforms as well as our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also, don't forget our other brands, Southern English Radio Show and Walk-em-All Outdoor Magazine. To find more information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. And remember, if it's anything dealing with fins, fur, and feathers, you're going to find it right here on Trilogy Outdoors.